One of the blessings of modern life is that we have almost instant access to up-to-date news, but of course that can also be a curse. Regrettably, a great deal of news is negative, even depressing. Read 2 or 3 news items, how do we feel? It's as if the world's going downhill, out of control, times are bad, and we ask ourselves, is there any hope? Today is Good Friday. An irony of the Easter story is that the day on which Jesus was crucified has become known as Good Friday. What's good about it? It sounds more like the ultimate bad news day. Perhaps today should be called Bad Friday, even extremely Bad Friday. Think about it from the point of view of the disciples, those who had spent up to 3 years with this remarkable man. In a matter of 24 hours, Jesus had been the victim of religious prejudice, corrupt court procedure, torture, public humiliation, and death by the slow, painful process of crucifixion. Now he was dead. The dream was apparently over. I think we would all agree that that's pretty bad news. So how do we cope with bad news? Do we get overwhelmed by the darkness or discouraged by the storm clouds without any hope for the future? Unfortunately, many people do. And of course, at this time, we're at war with the coronavirus. Last night, we heard that the lockdown period is to be extended by a further 2 weeks. We ask ourselves the question, is there hope? And the answer is yes. South Africa is coping a great deal better than many other more affluent countries. So how do we cope with bad news? Do we get overwhelmed by the darkness or discouraged by the storm clouds without any hope for the future? And again, many people do. I came across a nice story about an American pastor. This man would go through the horrific events of that first Easter Friday and end each event with the phrase, "It's Friday now, but Sundays are coming." That's how we can tell that he's from America. Sundays are coming. There was the bad news. They beat him and whipped him. They put a crown of thorns on his head. They nailed him to a cross, and he cried out and died. But after each Friday moment, the pastor reminded his congregation that Sundays are coming. Why the reminder of Sunday? Because Easter Sunday is the real heart of the Easter story. All of the bad news is simply the prelude to the resurrection. The good news that God brought Jesus back to life as a sign that the power of evil in our world has been defeated, and defeated to such an extent that Jesus even ultimately defeated death. That American pastor was talking as if this message would make a difference to the way we live now, and so it can. You've probably heard the phrase, every cloud has a silver lining, and heard people talk about there being light at the end of the tunnel. Both phrases encourage us to take a hopeful approach to life, particularly when bad things happen, as they frequently do, and particularly at this time as we fight the coronavirus. The Easter story takes this a step further and encourages us to see a world in which God is ultimately in control, a world in which bad people and evil forces will not prevail in the end. It provides us with something to hold out for when the going gets tough, when we find ourselves in the dark tunnel, and when the storm clouds are gathering. There are actually many Bible readings about hope. I've selected just 3 very short ones. So from Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." And from Romans chapter 15, verse 13, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit." And from Psalm 147, verse 11, The Lord delights in those who fear him, who put their hope in his unfailing love. Well, perhaps calling today Good Friday is actually the correct thing to do. We have to remember that Sundays are coming. The despair of today is pointing to the good news of Sunday. Just as we can be assured that the coronavirus will be beaten, just as we can be assured that whatever hardships we may be experiencing at the moment, they will pass, so too we know that the devastating cruelty that Jesus suffered will pass on Sunday morning. Or, as that pastor kept reminding his flock, Sundays are coming. Did you notice what our president said towards the end of his address last night? He said this: the message of Easter is one that we carry in our hearts tonight. It is the message of hope, recovery, and rebirth. And what comfort there is in those words. And just a short time for reflection. The Easter story is a message of hope. Hope tells us that we will not be overwhelmed. Hope tells us that the light is always there, even when the tunnel seems never-ending. Hope reminds us that Sunday always comes. So God bless you as you wait in expectation for the joy of Easter morning. And always remember, Sundays are coming. So let me end with a short prayer. Dear God, thank you that the Easter story is full of hope. Thank you that light makes a difference to darkness. Even in the worst of times, help us to see that there is always hope. Amen.